All right, greetings everyone, and welcome to our webinar today entitled Energy Innovation in Japan and the Future of Climate Change. My name is Kyoteru Tsutsui, and I'm Deputy Director of the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center and Director of the Japan Program here at Stanford. Today's event is a very special one as it lies at the intersection of two important webinar series at APOC this quarter. One is APOC's Winter 2022 webinar series, New Frontiers, Technology, Politics, and Society in the Asia Pacific. In this webinar series, different programs at APOC have tackled pressing issues around technology and its political and social impact in Asia, focusing on topics such as cybersecurity on the Korean Peninsula, state of democracy in India, and US-China competition in technological innovation. And today's webinar is the final one in this APOC series. And it is also the final event of the Japan Program Winter Webinar Series, The Future of Social Tech, US-Japan Partnership in Advancing Technology and Innovation with Social Impact. This webinar series has examined how new technologies might shape our lives in the coming years and decades, focusing on areas such as contents business, medical technology, and the future of work and diversity. For this culminating event for the two important webinar series, I am delighted that we have three experts to talk about technologies that might address one of the most pressing issues of our time, climate change. And I'm particularly delighted to have as our moderator, Kate Hardin, who is Executive Director at Deloitte Research Center for Energy and Industrials. She is an old friend of mine who has been a researcher and a consultant in the energy industry for a quarter century and has deep understanding of economic, social, and geopolitical implications of energy transitions that we all need to pursue in order to mitigate the effects of climate change. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Kate to open this important webinar for us. Kate, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure to be here tonight for this session. And I think your themes that you set out for the session are absolutely right on in terms of the impact of the technologies that we'll be talking about tonight on social change. And as we look at the movement towards energy transition, which is really looking to diversify into new technologies and new energy sources, we can see clearly that those changes will in fact bring changes to the way we commute, to the way we travel, the way we work, to many of the things that we do on a daily basis and the way we power all of those daily activities. So I'm delighted to introduce our panelists tonight. We have first Izumo-san, who is president and founder of Euglena Company in Japan, and also Ohira-san, who is the director of the Office for Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technology at NATO. And we will be hearing from both of them about their journey of commercializing new technologies, very different technologies, but that will be critical on the path towards energy transition. Let me just say a quick word about our format for tonight, which is that we will hear from Izumo-san, who has a PowerPoint to tell us more about the Euglena fuel, and also then a PowerPoint from Ohira-san looking at the hydrogen technology development, fuel cells specifically. And then we'll go to a Q&A time and kind of a panel discussion. So we'll welcome questions from the audience. If you have a question, please use the Zoom Q&A function in order to send that to us, and then we'll be able to answer your question. And we will wrap up within probably an hour, a bit over an hour. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about tonight. So welcome to our session. Kia, thank you again to you for pulling this together. And I'd like to turn first to Izumo-san to tell us about Euglena. Over to you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Kate. And yeah, hello, everyone. Good morning to the Japanese audience and good evening, America. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the great opportunity here today to share what we do and what Euglena is. And especially our company's Euglena renewable fuel business as well. Yeah, first of all, I think it might be the first time to hear the word Euglena, a microorganism, and the company name as well. So let me introduce the what euglena is first. And second half, I'm going to divide my presentation into the two parts. The first one is the who we are and what euglena is. And the second half is, of course, the company's renewable fuel business. Firstly, the company, Euglena Corporation, is originated from the Faculty of Agriculture of the University of Tokyo. And I founded the company in 2005. And we became the world's first company succeeding in the outdoor mass cultivation of the microalgae Euglena in December 2005. And currently, we are listed on the first section of the Tokyo Stock Exchange since December 2014. First of all, why did I found the company in 2005? Came back to the 1998 when I was a student, first grade in the University of Tokyo, and I visited Bangladesh. Bangladesh was still regarded as the first country in Asia, and I joined the internship program, which was held by a Grameen Bank. You know, Grameen Bank is still one of the largest NGO in Asia, and I saw the real poverty issue there. And I decided to solve the malnutrition problem in developing countries I saw in Bangladesh through providing nutrient-rich foodstuffs. Then I came back to Japan. I studied hardly and focused on the nutrition, and I researched around the wide range of microalgae and macroalgae seaweed as well. And finally, 2000, when I was a student, third grade in the university, I came to know the very nutritious, perfect food, euglena. You can see euglena in the movie. Euglena is the length is only 0.1 millimeter. We can't see directly. We should use the microscope for observing it. And the euglena is green colored. Euglena has chlorophyll. Euglena can do photosynthesis by capturing carbon dioxide and to produce carbohydrate and oxygen like other plants. And what makes euglena unique is that euglena is a kind of plant, planktons, and at the same time, euglena can move by itself like animal. Euglena has both plant and animal genes. Euglena can produce vegetable dietary fiber, vitamins, animal proteins, fishy unsaturated dietary fatty acid, every kind of nutrients, 59 varieties of nutrition, or euglena can produce at one time. It's very unique and helpful for solving the malnutrition issues in developing countries. But it's extremely difficult to cultivate euglena in sanitized environment, preventing from biological contamination. You can see euglena in the river, in the pond, in the sea, in the water. And in nature, every kind of bacteria, insects, birds, human beings, everyone loves to eat euglena. So it's impossible to cultivate euglena on a commercial scale. Mass cultivation is regarded as the impossible for keeping the clean, sanitized environment in outside. But we invented the totally new method for the mass cultivation of euglena in 2005, and set up the factory in Okinawa prefecture, the most southern part of Japan, because we need sunlight and carbon dioxide for utilizing the photosynthesis. So set up the factory in Okinawa and under the blue sky, not covered by the white wood. We cultivate Euglena on a commercial scale. And we are still the only one company for cultivating on a commercial scale for producing Euglena supplement food, tablets, capsules, and cosmetic lines as well. I'd like to summarize what is the microalgae Euglena is here. The very microorganism and grows by photosynthesis like plants, but at the same time moves around like animals. And one more, you can see the varieties of Euglena are there, and green colored, red colored, transparency, everything is Euglena is here. And some kind of Euglena can produce a lot of vitamins or minerals. But on the other hand, the other type of Euglena produce a huge amount of oil, wax, lipid in their body. And we select the special Euglena for producing Euglena lipid-based biojet fuel and biodiesel fuel 2010. Then this is the overview of the Euglena group of businesses. We do three businesses. The first one is create solution for solving the climate change, biofuel business. And the second one is the realize lifelong health for the people. And we provide Euglena drinks, Euglena green smoothies, Euglena supplement products, and bioinformatics businesses as well. And now we provide Euglena fortified school lunch to the children in Bangladesh. Every day, 10,000 school lunch packages we are providing in Bangladesh and Rohingya refugees camp as well. The head count is 400. The sales is 300 million, and market cap is 800 million is the company's status. And we, there are so many startups originated from the Japanese universities and colleges as well. And currently, 3,000 startups are coming from the universities, and 66 startups are listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange emerging market. And we, Euglena Corporation, proudly became the first company to be upgraded to the first section of Tokyo Stock Exchange 2014. And 2015, we were awarded as a Prime Minister Award as an excellent startup in Japan. And last year, we are selected as a most excellent startup company in the field of SDGs. We have explained Euglena biofuels to Her Excellency, the US Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, and His Excellency, the United States Ambassador to Japan, William Haggerty. I'd like to say again, thank you very much for giving me the great opportunity, the latest trend, the latest progress in the field of biofuel. And let's move on to the next agenda, the company's renewable fuel business. Firstly, why do I select the feedstock as a, why do I select Euglena as a feedstock for producing biofuel? Because, you can see in the left side, the charts, the comparison of oil production per area. It means that the productivity is totally different compared to other crops. oil palm, jatropha, sunflower, and soybeans, sugarcane as well. Euglena has the very high productivity on the same area, 12 to 13 kiloliter. We can produce lipid and oil production per hectare per year on the same area. The production is very higher than the other crops. And in the right side, a comparison of land use. Every crops, soybean, sugarcane, sunflower, oil palms, they are cultivated and harvested on the farmland, of course. But the land space is not enough for cultivating the other more feedstocks for producing biofuel. But we, Euglena Corporation, don't need the farmland for producing biofuel. I mean, we set up the pool for the cultivation on the inarable land or on the desert. We can set up the pool, and we cultivate Euglena on the very high production, and we harvest every week in a year, and we extract the lipid out of the Euglena's body, and this lipid and wax can be used for producing biofuel. So a comparison of the production efficiency and land use. Therefore, we select Euglena for producing biofuel. We started the renewable fuel business in 2010 and completed demonstration plant construction in 2018 and started to supply a sustainable jet fuel and diesel fuel from 2020. This is, you can see the photo, is the first and only plant to produce SAF. SAF, SAF stands for Sustainable Aviation Fuel. Our plant is the only plant to produce SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, and renewable diesel fuel continuously in Japan. Our supply chain is here. We use two different types of feedstock. The first one is, of course, Euglena, and the other microalgae like chlorella lipid as a feedstock. And we also take the UCO, used cooking oil, as a feedstock. And we make it the purification process. And our product is renewable diesel fuel and sustainable aviation fuel as well. Yeah, this is the most important point I have is here. Euglena's sustainable aviation fuel is available for you and all over the world. Officially approved by ASTM, American Standards for Testing and Materials, on 15th December 2019. And our product, SAF, has been certified with ASTM 7566 chapter as the sixth method for producing biojet fuel. So you can use, and global airlines, everyone, they don't need any changes, any customization on their engines, airplanes, and airport assets, infrastructures. They don't need. You can use 100% sustainable aviation fuel by using your current asset. This is a point, and our company's jet fuel is certified by the ASTM 7566. And the next point I'd like to emphasize on is that the renewable diesel is totally different from the first generation, and the company's next generation diesel fuel is totally different. In Japan, the conventional first generation biodiesel fuel is produced by using feedstocks, using cooking oil and microalgae at the same way of ours. But the production FAME, fatty acid methyl ester, is only limited blending ratio, or only 5%. Yeah, because the 100% FAME, the fatty acid methyl ester based first generation biodiesel fuel may cause engine and vehicle trouble and becomes high maintenance cost. But the company's second generation or euglena based biodiesel fuel is totally different. Hydrotreated, hydrocarbonized euglena biodiesel fuel can be used drop-in fuel, 100% applicable for all existing diesel vehicles. You can use today from now on, or you can use our euglena second generation diesel fuel. Therefore, we supply at current gas station for general consumers. The last year in April, euglena expanded the supply field not only business but also general consumers through general gas stand. And we proudly become the first company in Japan for realizing the first flight using sustainable aviation fuel is succeeded the last June. Our sustainable aviation fuel was tied to Honda Jet for the first flight in the world. So let me share the 3 minutes video for you. We did the final quality check prior to 24 hours for departure. I put the SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, to the Honda Jet. We declared the new sustainable aviation fuel, SUSTAIL. SUSTAIL stands for sustainable oil. We make it fly. We eventually make the Honda Jet fly by using sustainable aviation fuel. This is the future map Green Oil Japan project toward 2030. We established the biofuel demonstration plant 2018, and we have a strong confidence to realize the Green Oil Japan by 2030. And we are currently operating, and we have a plan to expand the capacity 1,000 times or 2,000 times larger than the current demonstration plant. We have a plan, concrete plan, and expand the capacity. And due to the scale of economy, we can decrease dramatically the production cost of SAF and renewable biodiesel fuel. By 2025, we produce we now produce only 125 kiloliters per year. It's small or very small amount because of the demonstration plan has a limit for producing SAF. So expand the capacity and 2,000 larger than the current plant. We plan to make 250,000 kiloliters by 2025 at a very reasonable price compared to the conventional oil-based biofuel, conventional oil-based fuels. And finally, I'd like to share the future we are aiming at is new era and changing the meaning of word LCC. The current LCC stands for the low cost carrier. It means that the only cost, but we change and we turn the word LCC from low cost carrier to low carbon carrier by using SAF without no special treatment or customize of the current asset, aircraft, engines as well. So we can do and we can change the airline from low cost carrier to low carbon carrier from today by using SAF. And of course, I know we need to decrease the price of cost, and by around 2025, we produce a huge amount of SAF and are providing to the many airlines, including your countries, United Airlines, Delta, Americans as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Izumo-san, thank you very much. That was a great explanation of all that you've achieved in Euglena. And I just want to ask you a couple of quick questions, which is, you began the company in 2005, and I think you're seeing a real change now in terms of interest in biofuels, in SAF in the past couple of years, right? Can you just say a little bit about, did you think when you started this in 2005 that you would achieve this success and have the kind of outcome that you had so far?
Yeah, it takes so long. Yeah, I mean, I just started this project for producing biofuel since 2010. I set up the company in 2005. You said correctly, but at that time, I wanted to solve the malnutrition problem, but I still continued to focusing on the research of Euglena. And there are 100 different types of Euglena I see, and some kind of Euglena can produce a lot of high quality lipid as a feedstock. Then since 2010, I've started, and last year, finally, I make it fly. So it takes 11 years, a very, very long time. But yeah, currently, since 2018, a lot of scientists, researchers, and consumers, business people, policy makers, they were interested in how to reduce the carbon dioxide in the airline, in the field of airline and in the air. So yeah, Japanese government and many organizations, institutions are very helpful, and we are strongly supported and sponsoring by the government since 2018. So the situation has totally changed at the time. So from between 2010 to 2018, it's hard for us as a startup to raise the money or to get this money is very difficult compared to your country. But now we are really supported, affiliated, sponsored by the government and other financial sectors. So I'd say we have to continue and never give up is the most important thing for startups.
That's great. Thank you for that. Let's turn now to Ohira-san to hear about hydrogen and fuel cell technology. And I think you also have a PowerPoint that you will take us through briefly, and then we can turn to some more questions from our audience.
Thank you, Kate, for a kind introduction. And good afternoon in California, and good morning in Japan. And my name is Eiji. I'm in charge of the hydrogen fuel cell program. It's a great pleasure for me to join this conference today. Well, expectation for the hydrogen and increasing toward the realization of the carbon neutrality. There are many policy commitments around the world. Well, and however, hydrogen-based society will be not realized immediately. We need to continue working on it over the long term. Today, I'd like to introduce the direction, current direction, and how Japan promotes hydrogen. Okay. All right, and first, I would like to explain the energy situation in Japan. It's a background, how we promote hydrogen. The proportion of renewable energy is increasing in Japan. In 2019, it reached about 10% of total energy supply and 20% of the total electricity. However, it's still highly dependent on fossil fuel. It's about 80% now. And from the perspective of improving energy self-sufficiency in Japan and combating climate change, it's necessary to further expand the renewable energy. On the other hand, carbon dioxide emission that is shown in the right figure, and carbon dioxide CO2 emission from the energy transformation sector, it's mainly in the power sector, account for about only 40% of total energy-related CO2 emissions. Well, decarbonization of power sector alone is not enough to achieve carbon neutrality. Therefore, it's necessary to consider various approaches other than using the renewable energy for the biofuel is one of the options. The hydrogen is one of the options. This figure, it's to role of the hydrogen. The hydrogen plays a very important role to enhance renewable potential. This figure prepared by the Hydrogen Council. Well, hydrogen contributes to expansion of the renewable energies by absorbing surplus electricity and transporting it across the countries. And the hydrogen mainly to water electrolyzer to provide liquidity balancing. And hydrogen can also be used in non-power sector. It's quite important. Hydrogen may be used providing the decarbonization and the transportation sector, the industry sector, the heat sector, and the side of the field sector also. In this way, the hydrogen does not compete with the renewable energies, but cooperate or integrate with it. Let me talk about current Japan's policy. In October 2020, the Japan's government or prime minister declared its ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. And other countries, to achieve the target, Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry formulated green growth strategy, well, as an industry policy to reach a challenging goal of the carbon neutrality to the positive cycle, economic growth, and environmental protection. Well, there are many policy measures. For example, to support R&D activities, METI established Green Innovation Fund. It's approximately 19 billion and for 10 years of R&D activity. I would like to also mention about hydrogen power generation was allocated Japan's 2030 energy mix. It's the first time for the hydrogen to appear on Japan's energy mix. It means that Japan recognizes hydrogen would be the energy option with reality. Well, this figure shows the kind of direction of the hydrogen effort Japan government. Then our target is to reduce the cost of the hydrogen. We'll proceed with the effort to expand the amount of the hydrogen in the future. For the hydrogen supply side, we'll make the best use of the current and existing domestic resources, such as the byproducts, hydrogen from the fossil fuel. And from the 2030, we also utilize hydrogen from the overseas and the domestic renewable energy hydrogen, renewable-based hydrogen. For the demand side, we have many actions into transportation, the power generation, the industry, and the thermal sectors. For the transportation sector, we already commercialized fuel cell vehicles and fuel cell buses. We try to expand it to the fuel cell of heavy-duty vehicles, well, maritime application in the future, maybe in aviation. In power sector, we already developed the small-scale or distributed energy sources. We would like to expand it in the power sector. We will introducing a large-scale hydrogen power generation around 2030. Well, this slide shows and the current status of the hydrogen fuel cell application. And we have the many fuel cell application. One is residential fuel cell, and we have already 410,000 units in the Japan market. And the mobility sector, we just behind the California, we already have over the 6,000 passenger vehicle and 100 fuel cell buses. And also we have over 160 public hydrogen filling stations. Okay, and let me share about our project for realizing hydrogen society, which is a step-by-step approach. And first step is diffusing the residential fuels I mentioned that. And through the first step, we aim at improving the fuel cell technologies. As a result of our activities, which is R&D activities, reacting the Japan regulation, we succeed commercialize the residential fuel cell in 2009. Second step is introducing the fuel cell vehicle. It's an application which utilizes hydrogen directly. Through this activity, we will develop hydrogen supply infrastructure, including the hydrogen filling station, So the most important result from this step is that we developed market environment to use hydrogen as energy sources. Our next step is to expand hydrogen uses, and with integration and for hydrogen and energy system, we try to develop hydrogen demand by hydrogen fueled gas turbines and international hydrogen supply chain to meet increasing the future hydrogen demand. Well, and particle gas is a key technology to maximize the potential of renewable energy, as I mentioned. Under this strategy, we are working on a hydrogen production through the hydrogen utilization, the basic or fundamental research, applied research, the field tests, including the regulation and the code and the standard. All right, and this slide is a kind of snapshot from our R&D activities. And this photo showed our result from the international hydrogen supply chain. We already developed small, but world first, liquefied hydrogen tankers. And this tanker already commissioned and journey have testing journey from Japan, between Japan and Australia. This tanker began to Japan's port. We already developed in the port equipment, including the liquefied hydrogen, the loading and unloading system, and the large scale the hydrogen storage or any other balance of plant. This photo shows our particle gas demonstration project combined with the megawatt scale of the particle gas. The key technology is the scaling up the water electrolysis. We developed the two types of water electrolysis. One is alkaline water electrolysis, and the other one is PEM water electrolysis. Our next step is the further scaling up of these technologies, the hydrogen transportation and the particle gas and hydrogen power generation. We just started a new project for the scaling up and decided to invest over the $3 billion US dollars for 10 years R&D activity. All right, and let me conclude my presentation. And hydrogen, it's not only solution, but the key technology for the carbon neutrality. So Japan's government has been strongly promoting hydrogen. For hydrogen, just started the market penetration. Yes, we have the fuel cell vehicle, fuel cell bus, a very small number. We need to enhance application, including improving technology also. But we need to long-term challenges. Well, our goal is not only in introducing the fuel cell application, but developing the low carbon energy system. Well, the scaling up or integration, that's a keyword to realize our goal. Okay, and I'd like you to close my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ohira-san, thank you for that. And while you've been speaking, we've had quite a few questions coming in from the audience. So I would like to direct some of these questions back to both of you. And I think it's not surprising that one of the first categories of questions is around costs. So let me ask you first, Izumo-san. There were a couple of questions from the audience about the cost of production of Euglena, and also how does the cost compare with fossil jet fuel and other alternatives? So maybe you want to answer that, and then we'll have a similar question for you, Ohira-san, in terms of the hydrogen fuel cells.
Yeah. The last remaining issue is cost. Yeah, cost is inevitably we have to talk about it. Our product, Susteo, stands for sustainable oil, the Euglena Susteo is 100 times more expensive than oil. It means that the current Japanese aviation fuel cost is $101 per liter. And we produce $100 per liter for producing biojet fuel and diesel fuel. Yeah, of course, I know, very, very expensive. But the capacity is, the current facility is demonstration plant. We, as a startup company, my mission is to turn from 0 into 1. I mean, we become the first supplier for the airlines in Japan, and currently we make and cost is extremely higher than the oil-based fuel, 100 times higher. But I'm really optimistic. I mean, as we expand our plant, the economics of scale will drive down our cost dramatically, and we will be able to deliver our products to you at a reasonable price. I mean, $2 to $3 per liter in the near future. Specifically in 2025, we have a concrete strong plan for expanding the capacity. So, yeah, current price. My answer is the current price is 100 times expensive compared to the crude oil-based fuel. But due to the limitation of the demonstration plant, we can overcome this issue in the next 3 years.
And it sounds like scale and expansion is the key, right, to bringing down some of those costs.
Sure. The quality doesn't matter, yeah, because the quality is 100% certified with ASTM standards, and logistics. They don't need any customization or any change. They don't need. So the remaining issue is only cost.
Got it. So Ohira-san, if we talk about hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, that is not a drop-in solution, right? So there is an infrastructure component that needs to be in place, right? But so tell us a little bit about how you're seeing costs coming down on that technology and the role of infrastructure kind of coming to the fore here, and scale in terms of that situation as well.
Oh, thank you, Maura. It's a quite good question. And as I said, that before that, the hydrogen fuel cell transportation system and the infrastructure, it's kind of a chicken and egg issue. We need to be breaking that kind of chicken and egg, but it takes a long time. And in the Japan case, and let's remember that almost 10 years ago, Japan's energy company and to automobile company and issued a joint statement to how to promote the fuel cell vehicle infrastructure. And according to this joint statement, they recognize the importance of the environment, the market environment, developing the market environment first. So in this regard, the Japan to pushing to infrastructure at first. Well, we have the 160 hydrogen filling commercial hydrogen filling station. And it's too much number of the station compared to the to current fuel cell vehicle. So we have just only 6,500 fuel cell vehicle. But we believe that to hydrogen filling station or infrastructure leads this market. And in the recently, Japan's government will support to enhance the fuel cell vehicle application, and not only to passenger vehicle, but also commercial vehicle. Well, it's a kind of fleet vehicle. Well, and Toyota already announced they developed the to medium duty and small light duty and medium duty, sometimes heavy duty and to commercial vehicle. I suppose it's a good opportunity to develop the fuel cell market to break the chicken and egg issue. Yeah, and again, we recognize that it's difficulty to enhance the fuel cell application in the mobility, but we believe there's going to be a good chance to break these challenges.
Thank you for that. And I want to ask you a follow-up question about hydrogen as well. We have a question from the audience about the safety of hydrogen. And one thing that I often say when I get that question is that we actually use a lot of hydrogen now, right? We use hydrogen in downstream processes. It's not green hydrogen, right? But nevertheless, there is the hydrogen usage, transportation, infrastructure is not completely new, right? So can you give us your view of safety and help us answer this question around where you see that in terms of rolling out of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and other aspects of hydrogen utilization?
Thank you very much. That's a good question about hydrogen safety. I usually always ask hydrogen safe or not. Well, and I would say that any energy vectors contain safety risk, and not only the hydrogen, but the gasoline and to natural gas, even in the electricity has content to safety risk, right? And the issue is we understand the character of the hydrogen, and we recognize where the risks, where the safety risk. We identify the hydrogen safety risk. And we developed the regulation and code and the standard to secure the risks. And we apply the similar technologies and to reducing the risk. One is not to leakage and to prevent the leakage. If we find the leakage and we sensing it and then stop the systems, we not to we try to reduce and the hydrogen in the air. If we cannot reduce the hydrogen, we are to prevent to ignite it. But there are many options. But issue is, and again, there we are to identify the risk with the scientific basis. This is a safety issue. And the other challenge is to disclosure of this information. We communicate with the public about safety issues. What kind of a risk when utilizing the hydrogen, and our role is important thing is not cross, but disclose this kind of information. Is a communicate and a safety issue with the public. It's quite important to understand or secure the public acceptance to disseminate the hydrogen.
Absolutely. So coming back for one more question in terms of scale and commercialization, Izumo-san, you have mentioned, of course, SAF. You've mentioned commercial jet use, right? A question about will we see microalgae, Euglena, in narrow body jets, wide body, looking at short haul flights, long haul flights, but also not just as aviation fuel, for example, being used renewable diesel in other applications, right? And will that additional demand potentially help speed commercialization?
Sure. That there are so many demand for using eco-friendly green fuels. So they push me to realize it faster as soon as possible. And for example, in Japan currently there are two major airlines, ANA, All Nippon Airways, and JAL, Japan Airlines. They are consuming the 10 million kiloliters every year for their flight. And by 2030, the government and ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, strongly push them to reduce the carbon dioxide 46% by 2030. It means that the demand the current consumption is 10 million kiloliter per year, then they have to use 4.6 million kiloliters every year for reducing the carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. And still, we have a plan to expand the capacity. Is that only 250,000 kiloliters per year? So we are short for the huge demand. So I need and we strongly need the risk money. And yeah, as I said, my company, we are the startup. The mission is make it fly and turn from 0 into 1. It means that we show the evidence and proof of concept the last year. Then we want a huge amount of risk money for expanding the capacity rapidly. Still not enough and covered by the Japanese government foundation. So the problem, the remaining issue is mainly the amount of risk money.
So you raised a very good point about funding, and I want to kind of contrast your road as a startup, starting your own company and solving a lot of these issues early on with Ohira-san, your work with the Institute, with NATO, in terms of how you have managed to organize the research and the funding. I think you've had two very different paths, both of which are leading to commercialization and some success, right? So maybe Ohira-san, let's hear from you first, how it's been working in NATO and getting some support for the research and for the funding. And then we can hear again about the path of the startup from Izumo-san.
Yes, and quite good to question to how to accelerate in a startup company to the market. And in our role, it's very kind of fundamental, well, early stages. And the public sector's role is not only funding the demand, but also the show the direction of the future. For instance, in the hydrogen sector, with the Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry showed a kind of roadmap to hydrogen fuel cell roadmap for 2030 or 2050. And also our role is developing the opportunity to join and to the stakeholder to develop the new market. We need to support not only technological issue, but also the regulation of the code understanding. And also our main role is to supporting and to early stage R&D, and not only to research based and also research center based, but also including the field test. Our role is developing some kind of not only technology development, but also securing the reliability of technologies. And then the scaling up, it's kind of a next stage, and next staging the private sector's role or private funding activity. And our role is how to connect in the early stage to the next stage. We have a very much, actually, and our role is very flexible. We are ready to communicate with the stakeholders, or including the startup company, to how we can support to accelerate their activity.
Excellent. So Izumo-san, let's turn to you in terms of your path as a startup. What were some of the obstacles that you addressed, and where have you found? I mean, clearly you found some support, some government funding, and how has that worked out for you? What would be your advice to others? Maybe the question here.
Yeah. It's a tricky question. I mean, yeah, it's very difficult for the Japanese startup companies for obtaining the enough amount of funding from the government and raising the risk money from the market as well. But the situation is totally different from your country. The amount of money being supported is totally different orders of magnitude. For example, we have a roadmap for achieving the carbon zero society in 2050, and we have a good technology which is qualified, certified with the global standard. And yeah, we have a technology, have a roadmap, but still the government fund, yeah, including NEDO, is supporting us. The roughly $100,000 US per year, and now we sell products, supplement products, cosmetic products to the Japanese customers, and our sales is $300 million US. Then we invest every year $10 million US in the field of R&D. But still not enough and covered with the governmental affiliation program and risk money as well. So the point is the scale and magnitude of the governmental support and fund is 100% different from your country and Japan. So it's hard to answer your question. For Japanese startup or so American United States
right.
startup. So we have to separate. And for the Japanese startup companies, you must go to the public market and access to the risk capital and risk money through the Tokyo Stock Exchange. I mean, it's Japan and emerging market of the Tokyo Stock Exchange is very accessible for the startups in Japan compared to the United States. So many startups are exiting to the M&A to the large company. But in Japan, it's very common for Japanese startup to exit as an IPO, initial public offering. So Japanese startup have to raise risk money through the stock exchange, public market, go on public. And on the other hand, United States, I know I'd like to answer the Mr. Alvey's question is a lot of companies in the United States worked on jet fuel from RG between 2000 to 2010, but had difficulties with yield and cost with fossil jet fuel. So how have I overcome these problems? So I'd like to answer this question is that the United States, American startup companies, they are still being a little too much ambitious. I mean, they wanted to become the energy supplier directly, but the startup needs a stable income, stable cash flow system. So we, Ukraine Corporation, set up the stable cash flow from the healthcare business, selling the products to the customers directly on the EC side or on the wholesale channel as well. And then we invest $10 million US every year for achieving big for achieving the big ideas like realizing make the airplane fly by SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, like that. So the pathway is still too ambitious in the United States. So for the American startup, you need to set up a stable and actual cash flow system first, and then so acquire the reasonable amount of risk money from the larger company or governmental foundation, governmental fund, and jump into the next stage is my comment.
No, you make a great point, and actually that is what we're seeing, particularly around some of these new technologies, where there is, of course, funding coming from the national labs, through the Department of Energy. There's been actually real interest in hydrogen in particular, Ohira-san, as you know, coming out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was just passed in November, right, for establishing hydrogen hubs in the United States and really looking at some of the infrastructure issues around that. But in addition, we're seeing that a lot of the larger companies across different sectors are putting venture capital into the startups. And so that, I think, is where some of the more stable investment that you're talking about, Izumo-san, is coming from. And what we're seeing actually is that for many of the bigger companies, they are really favoring partnerships, joint ventures, VC as the way to begin to look at the technologies coming out of these startups, right, without necessarily having to acquire the entire company or take the entire risk. So there are a lot of different business models actually coming up as bigger companies and smaller companies get together with government funding, with venture capital funding to try to push this forward in a number of ways. And so let me turn to you, Ohira-san, with another couple of questions that have come in from the audience. One is asking about, have you also seen a lot of new interest in hydrogen in the past couple of years, making the point that the difference is the idea of clean hydrogen or green hydrogen, right? The ability to make hydrogen out of what would otherwise be curtailed or excess renewables capacity, for example. But of course, the trick there is making sure that you've got the utilization of your electrolyzer very high in order to make that an efficient process. But nevertheless, would you agree that you're seeing some new interest in this now based on wider interest in green hydrogen, for example? And how is that helping what you're working on?
Well, and I already asked which color you prefer, the blue or green, or something, right? And but to tell the truth, I'm not concerned about the color of the hydrogen. My concern is to carbon intensity and the cost of how much we can secure the hydrogen. Our role is not to providing not developing the hydrogen-based society. Our goal is to carbon neutral society. And in this regards, to renewable hydrogen or kind of blue to fossil fuel plus CCS hydrogen, it doesn't matter. And both of the hydrogen, it's going to be the different role. Well, in my understanding, to kind of blue of the hydrogen or the fossil fuel based on hydrogen plus CCS, it's the alternative is a current fossil fuel like a liquefied natural gas. So you had mentioned that we Japan to introducing the hydrogen-based power generation. So we may use the hydrogen instead of the to natural gas, or sometimes to mixture with the hydrogen and natural gas. So my issue is how we developed how to well, and the size of the hydrogen production is quite important. And in my understanding, in the scale-up method, it's to the blue hydrogen or fossil fuel-based hydrogen have the scale method for the hydrogen production. But and on the other hand, renewable with the hydrogen, which it's combined with the water electrolysis. It's not only to producing a green hydrogen, but also to providing the other merit, other benefit, which is to grid balancing. And combined with power grid and with the dynamic operation of the water electrolysis from the low load from the maximum load times 10% to the 100% to the dynamic operation, changing the operation, and it can provide to meet to balancing meaning to supply and to utilization supply demand balance. Right? And in Japan side, and yes, we have very resource poor country. We need finding the best way to meet our huge energy demand. Yeah, we are trying to expand to renewable and in Japan, including offshore wind. And to expanding the renewable or the grid balancing is quite important. In this regard, and we have tried to introducing the renewable hydrogen or large-scale water electrolysis as an option of the grid balancing. It's maybe our target is around the 2030 or the 2035.
Well, and there's certainly interest, I think, too, in the United States around, as you mentioned, can some of the infrastructure for natural gas be used already for low carbon hydrogen, whether that's green or that's blue or what have you, right? Is there a way to use existing assets maybe to help make that transition, of course, with some modifications that would be necessary? So we are coming close to the end of our time. This has actually gone very quickly, and I'd like to end with one more question to each of you. And that question is, what are you watching most closely in terms of the success of a low carbon energy future? If you had to think about one trend that you are watching closely as we look at the next decade, what would that be? And that may be related to your individual projects, or it may be overall in terms of energy transition progress overall. But Izumo-san, let's start with you in terms of that trend that you're watching carefully.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Lastly, I'd like to stress that the hydrogen and the next generation biofuel can play a very important role for achieving the SDGs, but we have to promote more. I mean the current situation, especially in the field of battery EV-based electric vehicles, I believe that it cannot be the trump card to fight global warming in Japan. Japan has a high percentage of thermal plant generation and a low percentage of renewable generation. Japan and China rely on fossil fuels for 70% of our power generation. In France, 70% of electricity is generated by nuclear power plant, and in Denmark, 80% of hydroelectric power. So battery electric vehicles in France and Denmark contribute to carbon dioxide reduction. But in other countries, I don't know the exact number of your country, but in Japan, electric cars that don't reduce carbon dioxide emission. And so we have to promote the next generation of biofuel, and the difference between the conventional crude oil-based fuel and first generation of biodiesel fuel from our second generation of biofuel. The first generation of diesel fuel is used only limited 5% it means that they put biofuel only 5%, then reduce the number of carbon dioxide is still remaining only 5%. For Japan, by 2030, the number is 46% compared to 2012 by reducing carbon dioxide emissions. So we need to invent the totally new and drop in some very available some green fuel for the citizens and for the government as well. And they don't know well about the difference between the first generation and second generation. So I'm really watching and monitoring the trend in the battery technology advancing. And of course, we have to check it and should promote more the difference and the possibility for the next 5 and 10 years. And lastly, so we have a good plan to expand the capacity, and estimated cost is still very low, only $2 to $3 for producing, but still in short, only 3% will be covered by our SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, in 2030. We will produce only 250,000 kiloliters in 2025, and current consumption is 10 million kiloliters. So only 3% can be covered by our products. So we need to promote and expand more, so obtain the good amount of fund from the government and from the market, and expand the capacity, provide SAF and second generation renewable diesel fuel as soon as possible.
Excellent. No, you raise a great point, and I think your point about the broader implications across the economy, I think, is well taken. In the United States, to your point, we're looking at decarbonizing the power sector and then electrifying after that. But of course, and we've seen the benefits of that even in just moving from coal to gas in our power fleet, which when that happened 5 years ago or so, we ended up seeing a 3% reduction in annual emissions, carbon emissions, because we switched to gas. Now the challenge is, how do you further reduce that by bringing more renewables onto the system, by using distributed energy resource, a lot of different ways to even reduce that further. So absolutely take your point there. So Ohira-san, what trend are you watching? What are you focused on as you look to the next several years?
Yeah, and I think there's many hydrogen movement, and usually every 10 years we have the hydrogen movement in 1990 to 2000 to 2010. But the situation is quite different in the past movement, current movement. And you remember there's the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol is we reduce the carbon dioxide -6%, 87%, 8%. In this situation, renewable it's enough to achieve the target. But to the Paris Agreement and listen to the carbon neutrality, it's quite different. But people recognize that renewable is not only solution. We have medical to integrated solution, like hydrogen is one of the options. Well, and to biofuel is some of the option. In this regard, and I'm happy to, I welcome many countries develop the hydrogen strategies. And like in the US announced that Biden President Biden to announce the investment for over the $100 billion to the hydrogen fuel cells. And Europe also, they have the strategies. Well, it's quite encouraged us to promote the hydrogen. But it takes a long time for the energy transition. We can succeed in hydrogen society in several years, whether the 10 years or 20 years activities. Our role is how to keep this momentum over the 10 years and over the 20 years. Issue is, we showed our results every year, even in a not cost effective, but we showed we can realize the technology into the market. In this regard, we need to collaborate with and other countries to promote not only hydrogen. The hydrogen must not compete other energy vectors, including the batteries. We need to integrate or collaborate. Hydrogen needs to collaborate with other systems. So we need to communicate with the other energy technologies. Our goal is not beat other option. We beat climate changes. We need a recognize. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think that is its communication and promotion of these technologies and its cooperation around these technologies. So please join me in thanking our speakers, Ohira-san and also Izumo-san, and of course, Kyo, our host for tonight from Stanford University. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.